Good morning, and thank you to everybody and all of our WJXT News4Jax's insiders who have joined us for this town hall. We certainly appreciate you. I know that there are a lot of parents out there, moms and dads, I being one of them, who have a lot of questions. I've got a 15-year-old, and this is not an easy time. There are a lot of issues that we're wrestling with. We know the realities that exist out there. We know that COVID-19 is very real. We know that there's news that came out just last week that says that there is an increase in the number of coronavirus cases and children, especially in the age groups of 5 to 10 and 14 to 17, who have recently come down positive with coronavirus. We know that the number of hospitalizations among our children is on the rise. And right now that you are faced with the decision of whether or not to send your children back into the classroom or go ahead with virtual learning. We know that there are teachers out there who, number one, have families to protect. We know that there are some teachers out there who have the quote unquote underlying conditions and worried about themselves, or perhaps they have family members who have them, or worried about being exposed to coronavirus. We know that there are people who work within the context of the school buildings themselves, perhaps in the custodial staff and the office staff, and you have concerns as well, and perhaps you have joined us this morning. There are people who get our kids back and forth to school, the bus drivers. You too have concerns because the kids are going to be coming onto the bus, and you worry about the fact that perhaps some of them may have coronavirus symptoms and they are asymptomatic. And you know what? The kids are going to be kids, and we don't know whether or not they're going to social distance. So our attempt here is not to be political, but to answer as many questions as you may have and help you make an educated decision. That said, let me go ahead and introduce everybody who is here on this virtual town hall this morning so you know who's involved, and then we'll get the ball rolling and ultimately get to your questions. First, joining me here from News4Jax, our News4Jax education reporter, Joe McLean. Joe, of course, is on top of everything that is going on with virtually every county here in the Northeast Florida and South Georgia corridor. He'll field questions submitted previously by those of you who are News4Jax insiders and have been submitted previously. Also joining me here on the forum is News4Jax digital reporter and editor Travis Gibson. He's monitoring News4Jax live right now in the insider page. So those of you who are on the town hall, perhaps you'll hear something and a question will arise. You can submit that question live and we'll do every attempt to get it answered for you. And if you'd like to have one of our panelists specifically answer that question, make a notation of that, and Travis will get that to me and we'll make sure they do. As for our panelists this morning, we're very happy to have had them agree to be with us on the forum. Duval County School Superintendent Dr. Diana Greene is here, Duval Teachers United President Terrie Brady, and School Bus Driver Union President Representative Rebecca Cardona.
Good morning, Bruce.
Go ahead and thank each of you for being here. And I'm going to start with a question for each of you, and I'd like to get a brief answer. And then we're going to get to everybody's questions out there who has joined us on this virtual town hall, because their questions are certainly more important than mine. Although, as I mentioned, I've got a 15-year-old, and I've got some questions of my own. So let me, if you wouldn't mind, start with Dr. Greene. I know that you have revised the back-to-school plan a number of times and are awaiting state approval. And I know that as an educator, safety is paramount. And there is a dictate that we get the schools back open, but our kids are as precious to you as they are to every mom and dad out there. What are your biggest concerns right now?
Well, first, thank you for having us on this morning. I'd like to say I could narrow it down to one biggest concern. Our biggest concern is opening our schools and doing it in a way that we are going to be very strategic in all of the things that help mitigate the spread of COVID-19, and making sure that we have everything in place when those doors open. And again, we want to just say very quickly that we have the option for parents to participate through Duval Homeroom for their education, and we encourage them to sign up for Duval Homeroom if they have concerns about coming back to brick and mortar. And that deadline is approaching. It's Friday, July 31st. And I want to continue to encourage parents to, if they can, to please sign up for Duval Homeroom.
let me open my mic again. The deadline to do that is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes.
All right, Dr. Greene, we will come back to you. Now, Duval Teachers United President Terrie Brady, I know that the teachers have perhaps as many concerns as do the moms and dads out there. Some of them who are a little more advanced in age have, some of those underlying conditions. And we've done some stories with some teachers out there, Terrie, who have gone as far as to say, you know what, we're writing our wills. And make no mistake about it, these teachers also see those kids as their own. So they're as much concerned about safety as are we.
Thank you, Bruce. And thank you everybody for this forum. I will tell you right now, all teachers want to be back teaching their children. That's why they're teachers. They love their jobs, whether they're paraprofessionals, office assistants, bus drivers, custodians. We're here for one thing, and that's to educate students. But when you're talking about something that is so, I guess I'm going to call it secretive, like the coronavirus, none of us really know what the underlying effects are going to be, and none of us know what the real effects are going to be. But we as a district, as a union, and then as a school district, we're doing everything possible to make sure working conditions try to meet the needs of the variety of our students. Just like parents have options, our teachers have options. They could have signed up and still sign up to do Duval homeroom, which they can turn around. And now we've been discussing this with the district, and it looks like we're very close to possibly altering what the original agreement was on Duval homeroom about where they actually instruct students. We've got Duval Virtual, which is a whole year program. And then we've got different applications that they can do for ADA accommodations. And all they need is their doctor statements. And those interviews started just yesterday. And they're going to be doing them every single day to try to make sure individual employee needs, not just teachers' needs, are met before they enter into that classroom or even while they're in the classroom. There's no deadline to apply for ADA. But Bruce, I can tell you, even with all of the nano spraying by the district and the masks and the gloves and everything that we're trying to do for social distancing, there is still that apprehension of that unknown entity. I know that we're in the process right now of working every single day, trying to work on additional working conditions like additional health care provisions, additional leaves that our employees can take, whether it's federally sponsored or whether it's what we're negotiating here. It's going to be a long year, and I think everybody has to remember that things have to remain fluid, and we're lucky that we have the ability to have open line of communications, but it's a scary time, I'm afraid. And as long as we do what's recommended right now with our masks, our gloves, our washing our hands, our social distancing, we're already 70% there. And then we've just got to go those extra steps.
I understand. And you know what? We in the media take a lot of flack. And there are those who are on the front lines who take a lot of flack. And there are a lot of people who sit back and say, well, there's misinformation out there. And I don't think that they understand that the more we learn about COVID-19, the more we find out that we don't understand. And the situation is fluid. And as things change, we have got to change our protocols. And it's incumbent upon us as moms and dads and parents, as caretakers, to make sure that our kids know what's going on and accept some of the responsibility when it comes to, social distancing and washing their hands and wearing masks and things like that. And we've got to make sure that they understand that they've got to go ahead and do these things and keep that social distance from their kids.
Right.
So this all begins, if you moms and dads aren't taking your kids to the classroom, with the time that they go out to the bus stop and hop on the bus. And some of the bus drivers have some concerns. And one of the stories that's getting a lot of attention on News4Jax's right now happens to be about the fact that there is no contract with the bus drivers. And those bus drivers have some concerns. They don't want the kids getting on the bus, some of whom may be asymptomatic, passing on some of the problems to some of the other kids, some of the symptoms to the other kids, and certainly to the bus drivers. And the bus drivers want to make sure that there are certain protocols in place to make sure that everybody, once again, Rebecca, maintains, a level of safety.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bruce, for allowing us to be a part of this forum and voicing the concerns of the drivers and monitors here in Duval County. Local 512, in conjunction with our Passenger Transport Division and Safety Department at the IBT headquarters, have been monitoring daily all the research and recommendations to fight the contraction and the spread of the coronavirus during student transportation. The recommendations for the safest student transportation come from not only the medical professionals, but from numerous student transportation associations as well. In demanding a safe work environment for our school bus drivers and attendants in the performance of their duties, as well as to provide the safest transportation possible for Duval County students, it's clear that 5 essential components must be observed. I repeat, those must be observed. 1 is social distancing for all riders on the bus. 2, the use of face masks for all riders on the bus. 3, sufficient airflow and filtration on the bus. 4, continual sanitization of the bus. And 5, proper and safe loading and unloading procedures of the students riding on the bus. Our philosophy, if it's unsafe to do, we should not be doing it.
All right, thank you very much. Once again, the safety of everybody involved in education, our kids, to the teachers, to the custodial staff, to the bus drivers, and everybody involved is what is paramount here, to the families who are at home. Once again, a reminder to our WJXT insiders who have joined us live. Travis Gibson is standing by live. If you do have a question that pops up, perhaps one of our panelists says something that prompts something in your mind that results in a question, you can submit it live online, and Travis will be facilitating that for you. But I'm going to go first to our education reporter, Joe, and he's been fielding some of the questions that came in a little bit early on in the process. And Joe, what is the first question that we've got?
The first question is representative of a lot of the questions that we've been receiving. Basically, this is a very commonly asked question, and it is for the superintendent, Dr. Greene. This is really about the protocols for if a case of COVID-19 is confirmed in a school or district-wide. Can you talk a little bit about the protocols for an outbreak? Whether that outbreak takes place in a classroom, like I said, or throughout a building or throughout the district. The question from Kelly, what if teachers get or are exposed to the virus? How will frequent school staff absences be handled so learning is not constantly disrupted? And I know that's something that you have planned for, Dr. Greene.
Okay, Dr. Greene, this is a multi-level question. So let's assume that somebody comes down with the coronavirus, tests positive. So the first step is in, number 1, isolating, either the student or the teacher, and then there's got to be a multi-level response. So let's go ahead and answer that viewer's question.
Well, we actually just received additional guidance yesterday when it relates to whether a student has to self-isolate. And I want to first address it from a student perspective. If a student has contracted COVID-19, that student will have to self-isolate for 14 days. In addition, if that student has siblings that attend Duval County Public Schools, their siblings will also have to self-isolate for 14 days. When it comes to an employee, that employee would have to self-isolate for 14 days. We are in the process of hiring a rapid response team, additional nurses, and through that process, they will do the contact tracing and be able to notify individuals that, based on that contact tracing, would need to self-isolate. This is the reason why we are also training all of our teachers in the utilization of Duval Homeroom in the event if we had to close a classroom or close a school, the students would immediately transfer over to Duval Homeroom so that we can keep that continuity of education moving forward.
Let me ask you, the CDC just last week changed the guidelines for quarantine to 10 days. That said, right now the district is intent on maintaining that 14-day quarantine?
Well, if a student has something from a medical doctor that indicates that 10 days was the recommended, anything from a medical physician we will accept, but currently we are looking at 14 days. The guidance does indicate if they are without a fever for a number of days. But for us, we want to ensure that whatever's going to be the final document, it is very easy for our families to understand, very easy for everyone, our teachers to know there's no guessing. This is what has to happen.
And the second part of that question had to deal with staff absences because of COVID-19.
Well, we're very fortunate that we have a very strong contract with our ECC, substitute provider. Right now, we are prepared to have substitutes that have been trained, that are prepared to go if we have teacher absences. And that is how we would deal with teacher absences for any other reason outside of COVID-19. And we are working every day with our contractor to ensure that some of those substitutes can handle whether it's Duval homeroom or brick and mortar, so that we can ensure that the educational process is continuing to move forward.
Let me bring Terrie Brady into the fold on this discussion. Terrie.
Thank you. I think another issue is, and Dr. Greene has been working very hard with the health department, other issues, but I think a lot of our issues are, what happens if their leave forms run out, if their number of leave days they have run out, or do they have to take leave? And the answer is very clearly, we have got some provisions in place from the CARES Act, which allowed our employees to take up to a certain amount of leave days for themselves if they have to be isolated, or for family members if they have to be isolated. Now, that CARES Act does run out December 31st of this year, but hopefully we'll either be able to extend it or the federal government will jump in and do something so our employees won't have to take leave at that time. Also, they can take either sporadic or long-term family medical leave back for themselves or other individuals. And then if they've got short-term or long-term disability, they continue to get paid if they have to take longer than the 14-day, whether it's in isolation for just being quarantined because they've been around someone, or if they actually have the COVID themselves. And if they're just in quarantine, our employees can still teach via Duval homeroom if necessary. So they're still on the job, they're still getting their paychecks, they just won't be in the bricks and mortar facility right now. So it's a very convoluted process, but a lot of elements, but we're trying to put as much protection as possible for our employees, where there's not just teachers, but paraprofessional, office personnel, and everybody that works in the district. So there are various options for them for their leave if they have to take that leave, either during quarantine or if they get COVID.
And the reality is that if this becomes a problem, it won't be a problem just in Duval County. It will be a problem in Northeast Florida. It will be a problem statewide and perhaps nationwide. And education associations elsewhere will probably raise the issue, and perhaps there'll be some sort of legislative relief. Now, I know there are a lot of you who are WJXT News insiders who are watching live and have questions. And I mentioned the fact that Travis Gibson would facilitate those questions. So let's go to Travis now. Travis, you have got a question that was submitted just a few minutes ago. Who's it from, and what's the nature of that question?
Yeah, I do. This question is from Jessica G, and we already have a lot of people joining our live chat to ask questions. And this kind of goes in line with what we were just discussing. Jessica G's question is, what date can we expect the criteria for closing classrooms or schools due to coronavirus cases to be released? I know Dr. Greene talked about this, looking at possibly guidance from the state. If not, then maybe the district would have to come up with its own.
Dr. Greene?
Yes, I believe I shared that at a recent school board meeting, that if we cannot get guidance from the state or directly from the Department of Health, that we were going to start developing those guidelines, and we have. And we did ask the Department of Health to examine our guidelines and to give input into those guidelines, and that's where it sits today. Our desire is that we are going to have it out at least 2 weeks before school starts. In addition, the superintendents across the state are meeting, and the superintendents across the state would like a more consistent guidelines, that each district isn't developing something different, so that we all have one standard is to what is the metrics to close a classroom, what's the metrics to close an entire school.
And keep in mind, the best laid plans may very well be changeable when things start happening. A reminder to our WJXT News4Jax insiders that we have a section on News4Jax.com. It is the News4Jax Facing the Fall web section, and you can visit that anytime for constant updates on what's happening in school districts around the area. And by the way, if you've not made decisions about whether or not to send your children back to the brick and mortar classrooms or whether or not you're going to do virtual learning, we're going to post this entire live web session later today. So if you want to share it with your significant other so that you together can make a decision about your child, you can revisit many of these questions. Let me go now to Joe McLean, and you've got a question a little bit earlier from one of our insiders. Joe.
Right. This comes from a concerned bus driver. Now, this is a question for Rebecca. This writer says, quote, how will bus drivers maintain work hours if we only are driving high school and middle school students 2 days a week, 2 to 4 days a week? Will we be guaranteed the same number of hours?
Thank you for that question. At this point, that's unforeseen right now. However, we do have proposals as part of the negotiation process with both carriers, part of that economic package to protect their route standards.
Okay, Rebecca, thank you very much. Another live question from one of our WJXT insiders who's online right now, Travis.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, there's a couple of them about the mask mandate. There was some question about would the mask mandate be lifted if the mask mandate that the city has put in place, if that is lifted, would students still be required to wear masks? Is that any way connected to the city's mandate, or is the schools separate from that?
Dr. Greene?
Well, thank you. Yes, mask will be mandatory regardless of whether there is the city mask mandate or not.
And I think the reality is that the masks are not going away anytime soon here in Jacksonville or elsewhere around the country. Terrie, the teachers, are they satisfied with the mask mandate and having the kids wear it? Are they confident that that will help mitigate some of the spread?
Anything that can help mitigate, of course, we're a little bit more excited about. But the thing is teachers have got to have some kind of, secret weapon in their pocket in case students refuse to wear masks once they get in the classroom. So we have joined forces with the district through our Code of Conduct Committee to address the mandate of wearing masks and or shields, because there's two different options in the classroom, and what happens if there are repeated offenses and what type of penalty could be for the students if they refuse to wear them on a repeated basis. So we're in the process of meeting and discussing those options now. It was the desire of the district that we meet as a Code of Conduct Committee and the desire of the union, and hopefully we'll have that resolved, if not by tomorrow, by the beginning of next week. So Dr. Greene can share with the school board members for the final adoption, and then we can get it out as soon as possible.
Before I go to Dr. Greene about potential ways to handle students who don't wear masks, let me ask Rebecca about bus drivers' concerns about students wearing or not wearing masks on school buses while they're getting to and from school.
Thank you, Bruce. There's a huge concern about the students aboard the bus not complying with the mask requirement. These drivers are going down the road. They can't concentrate constantly back there behind them. At this point, the guidelines that's been outlined by the transportation department is that they would document those students' names for 3 consecutive days of non-compliance of not wearing that mask. We don't feel that's appropriate. We feel that notification should be immediate. 3 days may be 3 days too late for that. We've also, to help mitigate some of that, the compliance and the enforcement of the mask wearing, we have proposed to the carriers through the negotiations process that an additional monitor would be added to all routes, especially with the elementary age students, to help mitigate some of that.
Dr. Greene, can you take me behind the scenes on the discussion, since there's no official policy as of yet, and you've got yet to address the school board, as to what some of the ideas are about enforcing the mask mandate and getting students who may not be in compliance or who refuse to comply to go ahead and wear those masks?
Well, if you remember when I shared this with the board, our desire was not to make this punitive, and that we needed to work with students from the very beginning do a lot of awareness. We're developing a parent video, teaching parents and students how to take care of their facial coverings, what to expect when coming to school, the expectations for students in wearing facial coverings. Some of I think the issues that are being talked about is the first time you have to talk to a student, you just simply give them a facial covering or a disposable face covering. Next, having a conference with the parent, indicating the requirement for students to be wearing facial coverings at all times, the expectations, and I'm sure this committee, the Code of Student Conduct Committee, working alongside with members of DTU, they're going to give other suggestions about what we should do as it relates to facial coverings, as well as issues related with wearing facial coverings on the bus.
I'm just going to be very blunt. You've got a segment of the population that gets very belligerent about it. And you know that some of the parents' attitudes may be passed on to some of the kids' attitudes, especially, you know, during in a certain age group. If it escalates to that, how's that handled?
Well, I don't want to indicate how it would be handled because it is part of the Code of Conduct Committee, and through the Code of Conduct, all of those steps will be mapped out and presented to the school board for an adjustment to the Code of Student Conduct. Our number one priority is to ensure that we are instituting strategies that are going to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And we're going to do it in a way that everyone knows the expectations and everyone knows that as a district, and whether it's our relationship with DTU or our relationship with our bus contract providers, that it's not going to be tolerated, and that we are going to ensure that we do everything possible to keep everyone as safe as possible.
And I think everybody knowing that there's a zero tolerance policy will go a long way. And also knowing that, you know, I mean, you get belligerence in other areas as well. So, you know, it's not something that school bus drivers are foreign to. Joe, you've got a question from one of our News4Jax's insiders. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bruce, Ashley asks, will there be extended day programs for working parents? And Bruce, this is a question that a lot of parents have had, not only about what the options are, but also what changes are there in this new realm of COVID-19.
Okay, so far we've talked about the school day. Dr. Greene, how about that?
Yeah, we will have extended day. Currently, we have extended day camp. And they've done a phenomenal job with our extended day camp. And that will continue when our school doors open, whether it's extended day or gear up, team up, communities in schools, all of our normal partnerships with other providers who provide before, after school programs will be offered and available for families.
And Terrie, you know, this is important because even though we've talked about teacher safety, the reality is that, you know, these teachers have been without a paycheck for a long time. And it's not that they don't want to go back to school because they've faced some very harsh economic realities as well. But there are opportunities for them. What do you think about the extended day and the chances that this opens the door for them, Terrie Brady?
Well, extended day is going to be run basically like it always has been. You have to put in an application. You can work after work hours. Our concern was about that was what happens when the students leave those home classrooms, because you've got during the day bricks and mortar teacher teaching in that classroom, and then extended day then kicks in and uses that classroom that might be a different instructor. And so we've already gotten a cleaning cycle or a custodial sanitizing cycle that's going to be utilized every night to make sure that these classrooms are going to be cleaned as soon as extended day is over. It might be a little bit later in the evening, but they will be clean. And also the district has made provisions with this new magic nano spray that has been used in hospitals and other health facilities that are also going to be sprayed in all of our classrooms in high school, middle school, and elementary. That's supposed to combat the bacteria and other infections that could be adhered to surfaces, whether it's in the bathroom or on their desks. Anything that provides opportunities for our people to work is a wonderful idea. But when they work, they also want to know that provisions are going to be made for spacing, for wearing of masks, and also for cleanliness for that classroom the next day. And from what I've been told, that is going to take place, and we will be monitoring it on a regular basis.
Our focus this morning is on Duval County, but each different county has a set of different reopening plans. I want to let you know that our next town hall is Tuesday, August 4th at 10 a.m. Focus will be on St. Johns County. Then the week of August 10th, there is a town hall for Clay County Schools. I'll let you know when we get a date certain for that. Again, if you are a WJXT News insider who is joining us live for this virtual town hall, Travis is monitoring your incoming questions, and I believe he has one that just came in a few seconds ago. Travis.
I do, Bruce. Thank you. This is actually one that we've received quite a few times. If an elementary school, and this one is from Wells, if an elementary school or classrooms are not large enough to appropriately socially distance, will portable classes be added? And I think there's been quite a few questions about how social distance will happen in classrooms.
All right, let's first get this answer from Terrie Brady, because classroom size is always an issue. Terrie.
I'm very concerned that I have read the CDC guidelines for schools, and it says basically where it can be made. The 6-foot social distancing is what we want. And that is why we've got face shields the district's providing, or the face mask, or in the 3 through 8 classrooms, they're going to have the partitions on the desks. And even teachers are going to have some of the plexiglass partitions on their desks where they can teach on the they call it the blackboards, or on the boards electronically. But my concern is 6-foot distancing is not going to take place, because when you've got elective resource classes, mainly in the middle school and the high schools, that are already at 30 students, and they're saying they're spraying the nano spray, but social distancing as we know it is not going to take place. They're doing the best they can, but some of these 30-person classrooms are in portables already. So we are asking for that spacing to take place. I think when we get back, we're going to see how teachers are going to position their classrooms with the advice from the district, and then we're going to have to take it from then on. But just remember, and I have to make this a political statement, this district is going to hire who and how many people they can to meet the needs of all the guidelines. But we've got no extra money except for the CARES Act. And we've got to hire additional employees to do monitoring, to do teaching, and also to do cleaning, and to meet the needs of what this virus is causing us to initiate as a union, and as classrooms in the school district, and with the superintendent and our school board to allocate resources. And we've got to get additional funds in here to make sure that everything is implemented to the best we possibly can be, with additional financial resources to meet those needs.
Rebecca, I'm going to have a question for you in a second, but let me go ahead and ask Dr. Greene to address some of the issues that Terrie just brought up. Number one, contingency plans. Funding is always a finite resource. Possibilities about petitioning for more funding.
Well, as you know, we are deep in the HEROES Act, and hopefully that gets passed when they come back in session, to continue to support school districts, because Ms. Brady is absolutely correct. We've done a great job in the classroom, and with the distancing, the desk shields, the masks, but when you get to physical education at the middle school level, that is well over 30 students. And even though we could say, make sure you're outside, well, what are you going to do on the day that it's raining? You can't be outside. You're going to have to be inside the gymnasium. And how are you going to ensure there's that social distancing and students are wearing their facial covering? So we do have some additional challenges that we are working through to figure out how we can support our schools with these classes that are what we call electives, that are outside of the core academic classes, and to support those teachers. And some of the issues that we're facing is that many times it's a singleton class. So there's not another teacher on that campus to teach that class. So how do we address that? Everything that we have talked about as a district and with the board, wherever possible, we would implement social distancing. And in some cases, we have been upfront from the very beginning that we cannot implement social distancing. And that is why we made masks mandatory. I think Duval was probably one of the first school districts to come out and indicate that students would have to wear facial coverings.
You know, I think it's important that everybody who's joined us on this virtual town hall understand that, you know, while sometimes certain things can't happen, it doesn't mean that people are on different pages when it comes to the issues. When you run a business, there are certain realities that come into play when you've got resource issues and financial issues, and you've got to deal with those, and you've got political issues that get in the way, and you've got to frame things in that context, perspective, and focus when you are trying to wrestle with those issues. I just wanted to point that out. So we were talking, Rebecca, about social distancing. That's one of the things that the bus drivers were talking about. You know, when you're talking about the space of a school bus, you're talking about a small confine there, and you're talking about kids being on top of each other. It's virtually impossible to separate them. And that's one of the issues that the school bus drivers had.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we haven't been able to agree to at this point through the MOU that we've proposed. We're close on some of the issues, the mask wearing, the sanitizing, but one of the major issues that we're not close on is the social distancing aspect. And I've already reported that the seating arrangements on a bus, the Duval buses that service Duval County, most of those are 72 to 77 passenger buses, which has 25 to 27 seats. And when you put 2 children per seat, the capacity of that bus is 50 plus students, which is a concern. They're elbow to elbow. And then you add in the fact of the inability to enforce the mask requirement. Going down the road, the children, I mean, they don't even comply with wearing their seatbelts at this point. So getting them to comply with wearing a mask on top of the inability to social distance as the health department and the CDC guidelines state is a huge concern, not only for our drivers and monitors. Let me be clear, it's not only for our drivers and monitors, it's also a concern as it relates to the health and safety of the students on the bus as well. We have proposed through our MOU with the carriers to help mitigate at least some of that social distancing, since the district has made it clear that at this point they're not able to social distance on the routes, that we keep at least those first 2 to 3 seats behind each driver clear to at least allow some space and some distance from the students to the driver, as well as for the ESE routes, at least maintaining 1 to 2 seats between the monitor that's assigned to that bus and the student that's on that bus. We're all in the same boat as it relates to concerns for health and safety for these employees, but we all need to come to some agreement on how to mitigate some of that so that everyone is protected and remain safe while they're trying to do their duties. Listen, our drivers and monitors, for the most part, they really do want to come back to work. We know that children need to get back to learning. We also know that there's a group of children that learn best in a classroom setting. We know that our drivers and monitors and teachers would like to get back to work to provide that service that they were hired to do, right? But we want to make sure that all of them, when they're at work, that they are protected and they are safe.
I said at the top of this, safety of everybody involved is certainly key. Terrie, you had some things you wanted to add to this discussion.
I have to say one thing because Rebecca is exactly right, but Rebecca represents the bus drivers and I represent the teachers and the paraprofessional office personnel. But again, we have, organizations, unions that represent all of our custodial workers, which is AFSCME. We've got LIUNA that represents our technology people who are out in the field all the time. And without them, I don't know what we would be able to do because of Duval Homeroom and Duval and Duval Virtual. We also have IBEWs representing all of our maintenance workers. We are all in this together as one unit for safety and the best health possible for all of our employees, and then to meet the needs of this growing high challenge of instruction for all of our students, whether it's online or whether it's face-to-face. But I have to say, Bruce, with the bus drivers, and first of all, I wouldn't do it. I'd rather teach a high school physics class, which I'm a kindergarten teacher, than I would to ride a bus every day. So Rebecca, I'll never be in your organization. But I will say, it is important that those students and the bus drivers are safe and they social distance, because when they're off that bus, they immediately come into school to my people that I represent in the classroom, in the cafeteria, and everyone else in the school. So we are all interconnected. So safety begins when they first pick those students up, and then when they pick them up and take them back home in the afternoons, and what goes on in those buildings every day. So we are all in this thing together, and we're going to be supportive of each other in this achievement to try to have the best safe and healthy working conditions as we possibly can.
I think the message here is clear. If things get out of hand, this is a snowball rolling downhill. Joe, you've got a question from one of our insiders.
Yeah, and this question addresses the news out of Miami-Dade County, that district there, saying that it is going to begin the school year with 100% virtual learning. Although, as I check right now, the FDOE has yet to approve that plan. Still, the question remains, why is the districts pushing for the hybrid model when many are saying that 100% virtual learning is a better option for right now? We spoke to Warren Jones, the school board chair, last week, who said he was briefly considering, after hearing concerns from teachers and parents, that he might submit a new waiver to the FDOE. Of course, he later backtracked on that. But can you answer, if we can, Bruce, ask the panel about that question about the option of moving the district to 100% virtual learning, at least until the COVID-19 tapers off a little bit in this area. And I know there are a lot of barriers, Bruce.
Yeah, and let me add to that, the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics sent an 11-page white letter to Governor Ron DeSantis and pointed to significant benefits of children going back to school, but added this: it is said that in many areas of the state where districts are grappling with reopening classrooms amid the pandemic, coronavirus prevalence will not decrease enough in the next 4 to 6 weeks to make the benefits of school attendance outweigh the risks. All of that said, with Miami going back to virtual learning exclusively, at least at the beginning of the school year, and Warren Jones saying he, thought about it, but it's not an option here. Dr. Diana Greene, your thoughts first.
Well, Miami-Dade is also in a very different place than Duval County. Miami-Dade is still in phase 1. And in part of phase 1, it specifically states that schools would remain closed. That is not the case for Duval. Duval cases are rising, and that is why we were insistent in submitting a hybrid model. That model allows for students to be in school some days and in other days receive their instruction through Duval homeroom. And like Miami-Dade, our plan has not yet received approval for moving forward. Part of the plan also gives parents the option of receiving their instruction online. And I'm going to keep repeating it, we highly encourage parents that if their comfort level is such that they do not feel being face-to-face is a good option for their family, they need to sign up and register for Duval homeroom. And if they feel like their child has an underlying medical condition and they know for a fact they're not going to return for the 2021 school year, we encourage them to sign up for our virtual school, DVIA. And we are going to continue moving forward with the options that the state determines that they will approve. And as I tell my staff and I tell the board, my new favorite word is pivot. We have to be able to pivot because there may come a time that we do need to go 100% virtual, and we need to be prepared to pivot in a flash to do that. And that is why we delayed the start of the school year, providing training for teachers who are going to do Duval homeroom full-time, for the teachers who are teaching through the hybrid model where they're teaching face-to-face some days and Duval homeroom on other days. And then those teachers who are teaching face-to-face 100% of the time being trained again in Duval homeroom for the instance if we have to close a school or we close the entire district for face-to-face and transition to Duval homeroom.
Having been an interviewer for the better part of my life, I have learned sometimes to listen to what I'm not hearing. Listen to what somebody's not saying as opposed to what they are, and I will leave it at that. Let me ask you about contingencies. Should the state not approve the plan, what's the next step?
Well, the state, if they do not approve the plan, they're supposed to give feedback as to why they are not approving the plan and what would it take to get the plan approved. As you know, we are under an executive order from the state of Florida that brick and mortar should be open 5 days a week for all students. And our plan does not meet that, and we are requesting a waiver. I feel confident that the plan is written in a manner that should receive approval, but we, as I just said, we're prepared to pivot if we have to.
We are in an environment today where, who knows? Terrie, let me ask your thoughts about, the move that Miami has made, the statement from the American Academy of Pediatrics here in Florida. Your thoughts from the teacher's perspective.
There is no one answer to you, Bruce, and I wish I could give it to you. My personal thoughts have been that we should have opened all online because the cases are rising. They have not flattened out yet. And I'm very concerned over the fear and the safety of our employees and of our students. We all have nieces and nephews and children who are related to us that are going to be in those classrooms. And we don't know. It's like that unknown factor. But Miami is a hot spot, one of the biggest hot spots in this country. And I think that if we enter back into school in 2 weeks and the superintendent and her staff has the ability to give out laptops, to give out additional iPads, to get everybody on board with the internet hookups that we need to, if we need to, and I'm going to use her word, then we can pivot to go total virtually. I would like to make a statement that, remember, education is not just about having the best pedagogy. It's about relationships with our educators, with those students. And when we went total virtual in March, they had already had the students since August. They knew their quirks. They knew those that could work independently, those that needed a little bit more work. And it's a little bit more difficult at the beginning. I believe our employees could rise to that occasion. And because of what we might have to do down the future, when they come back to school, a day and a half is going to be spent on nothing but how to go on the teacher platform, learn how to do high-level instruction, and then it's going to be broken up by those subject area, whether it's primary, elementary, or intermediate, or subject areas, to help develop those lessons to meet those standards, whether you're going to be teaching brick and mortar or whether you're going to be in Duval homeroom or Duval virtual. So it's all about training, it's about relationships, and it's about preparing for what we need. But I would have liked to seen us to go to total virtual to start the school year off. But as Dr. Greene said, there is a mandate coming from Tallahassee. And matter of fact, our union has filed a lawsuit to try to lift that mandate and to give flexibility for the variety of school districts throughout this state to do what's in the best interest of those students and those employees. And we're still waiting for a legal rendering from the courts.
I'm going to step down from my chair as a broadcast journalist for a second and, take the role as a parent. I have long advocated that, we have a responsibility to work with the teachers and make sure that our kids have the tools they need. And when I'm out speaking in public in a forum and they ask me what's wrong with society, my answer is usually that parents aren't involved as much as they should be. They don't know what their kids are doing. They don't know what their kids are doing in school. They're not, checking to see if they're doing their homework. They don't know what their kids' assignments are. And I think now more than ever, that is so much more important. They need to be, working alongside of them and checking to make sure that they're doing the things they're supposed to be doing, understanding what's happening in their world. And it's okay to question them. I never thought that we'd be living in a day and time when we said, it's okay to be online as much as you are right now, because, this virtual learning is a time when they've got to be online. So, we were parents, moms and dads have to take more responsibility and step up to the plate, who have to help our teachers and those bus drivers and everybody who is, I'm going to say, in the context of the education system. And that includes, the custodians and the office workers and everybody who is out there right now, and help them do their jobs better. Because if we're not there to support them, if we're not there as the foundation, they can't do their jobs effectively. And it's our kids who are going to suffer. It is our kids who are not going to thrive and survive and be the best in the future. All right, back to my job as a broadcast journalist, and back to Travis right now, who has a question from one of our WJXT News4Jax insiders who's live in this town hall right now. Travis.
Yeah, using our favorite word, I'm going to pivot to a question here. And this is one that can apply to both teachers and bus drivers. Is the district or unions asking teachers or bus drivers to get tested before they come back to school?
Rebecca, we'll throw that your way.
I can tell you through the negotiations process that that is not a proposed guideline at this time.
And how about teachers, Terrie?
Currently, right now, it's not just teachers, but none of our employees are being mandated to be tested before they enter into the school. But I do know that the district is working with different testing facilities that if teachers need to be tested, or our students or other employees throughout the district, they will be made available. But everyone has to understand, again, that's a cost factor to secure safety. The quicker turnaround testing is more expensive than the one that's 5, 6, 8, 12 days. And if you've been tested and you might have the virus and you wait 12 or 14 days, you've already been isolated. And so I hate to say it, but it just, it validates what you think you knew. But the district is working frantically to try to come up with various options if our employees or even our students need to be testing, and especially for our families who don't have that money to go out and get those tests done. And they will be made available to all of our employees very soon.
The mandate here at Channel 4 is, look, if you don't feel well, just don't come to work. And we would hope that common sense would prevail among anybody who seems to, not feel well, whether they think it's COVID or not, especially with what's going on right now. And because of all these issues that are going on, I want to remind you that WJXT has a daily newsletter that comes out at 7 in the morning, 11:30 in the afternoon, and 6:30 in the evening, constantly updating it so you're in the loop when things happen. For instance, when Dr. Greene's proposal for back to school is hopefully approved by the state, you'll be the first to know about it because you get that newsletter. Joe, let's go to another question from our WJXT insiders.
This question is from Dee Dee. She says, Rebecca mentioned airflow on the bus. Does that mean that in our Florida heat air conditioning will not be in use on the bus? What about children and drivers with health conditions such as asthma? Masks already make breathing difficult. Trying to breathe in a mask with no AC is ridiculous.
Rebecca?
Sure. So we've not heard of any specific guidelines implemented for that. We have heard and we've heard from the professionals that fresh airflow is a crucial for ventilation and filtration. Here in Florida, it may be 98 degrees outside, but inside a bus that could equal 120 degrees inside the bus. And coupled with the fact of now the mask requirement, that's going to give the kids the want to pull those masks off. So we're hoping, at least as it relates to the school bus setting, that the district will move to waive the current anti-idling policy that they have in effect. That way the interior temperature of those buses can be maintained comfortable for the students and also the drivers and monitors that may be on there to help alleviate any health risk due to the heat exposure and also wearing of the mask.
All right. Travis, you've got a question from somebody watching live who just joined our virtual town hall. What's that question?
Yeah, this question is from Joyce. And this is one I've heard quite a few times from parents. How will elective classes such as art, music, physical education, computer, Spanish be taught and graded and handled any differently this year?
Dr. Greene, that's for you.
Well, the question didn't say whether it was through Duval homeroom or in brick and mortar. If it's in brick and mortar, it will be the same, whether it's Spanish, whatever the class that a student is taking, they still will have the mandatory mask requirement. We are actually looking at for speech, we're looking for there are masks that actually have a transparency panel so that you can actually see the lips of the person speaking. And so we're reviewing those types of masks, especially for our speech teachers and students that need that kind of support. For our performing arts, we have a committee that is working with the guidelines on what should be done for our performing arts, especially for chorus, the social distancing that we are requesting that be put in place, and how they should deal with those lessons with students. But the grading and providing assignments would be the same. If we're speaking about Duval homeroom, we have stated that electives could be different if middle and high school students are taking Duval homeroom full time. But whatever electives that are available, the lessons and grading would be the same that we did when we went to complete Duval homeroom over the spring of last year.
Dr. Greene, thank you. We have time for one more question, then I'm going to ask the panelists to stick around because I'm going to ask that they each make a final comment, and I'll let you know when our next upcoming town hall is. So Joe, let's go ahead and fire off that last question.
This question is from Insider Shannon. How will students be handled safely at lunch without endangering teachers?
Dr. Greene?
Each school had a requirement to develop a safety plan or transition plan, whether that's how students move about the campus or things such as cafeteria. Every school has a plan where students are 6 feet apart. When students are eating, that is actually the only time they can remove their facial covering. During that time, when they are transitioning to lunch, they're required to wear their facial covering. And then when they leave lunch, then they will be required to put their facial covering back on. We are working with DTU on some other options that will support more social distancing. Our secondary schools are looking at other places for students to eat other than just the cafeteria. Again, a lot of them are looking at outdoor seating, and that's wonderful as long as the weather is in a state that students can be outside. But our schools are being very creative. They're doing things outside of the box, and this is the purpose of the hybrid model, because we have a high school, Sandalwood High School, over 3,000 individuals, and this hybrid model reduces that number down to 50%. And then when you add in the parents that have signed up for Duval homeroom, that will continue to reduce those numbers and make it easier for us to implement social distancing, ensuring that students are following all safety protocols that we have in place. And one of the things that wasn't talked about was the requirement of a hand washing regimen that we are requiring, especially at the elementary level, that students are constantly, are frequently have access to either hand washing or hand sanitizer. And so by implementing all of those things, we believe that this is a way to be safer for not only our students, but also our teachers.
Terrie, teachers satisfied with those protocols?
Most teachers are not quite aware of all of this yet because the plan was just officially voted on a week ago today. And since then, we have been working day and night with the district and with our own members, trying to change work calendars and pay calendars and safety protocols and lunch and how we're going to organize it and code of conduct for the masks. And it is a huge monumental task just for the peripheral needs of safety, not including the academic challenges and the needs. So are we satisfied with it? We're missing closer. I think we're getting closer to where we need to be to try to keep people safe. But everyone who's watching this and who's hearing this and needs to understand that we are going to have to pivot every single day, and we're going to have to make sure these plans are fluid, because until we get into these work settings we're not going to know what the real needs are, and we're going to go deeper to meet those needs every single day, depending on what comes up in the different work environments. And we're going to be working collaboratively to make sure our students and our employees stay safe. And let's be honest, breakfast in the classrooms for the elementary schools are district wide. So they've already been eating in the classrooms already. So that is one of the many options that we're going to take place, but we have union contracts we have to abide by, and we have to honor, and we have to work through with the district to make sure the needs are met.
We have challenges we have never faced before,
Yep.
and we all have to work together in an effort to overcome those challenges until this coronavirus pandemic is not an issue anymore. And frankly, from everything I have heard from those who are involved, epidemiologists, scientists, doctors, it is something we are going to have to grapple with for some time. I can't thank our panelists enough. I'm sure you each have something you'd like to say before we move on. Rebecca, let me start with you.
Sure. Thank you again, Bruce, for letting us be a part of this forum to answer questions from parents, concerned citizens. I think it's clear here in this setting, and as this pandemic continues on and the effects that it has on the education system, that transportation, student transportation, is a part of the education system. The guidelines and processes that have been put in place for the brick and mortar setting for the teachers and the school staff, we feel should also be implemented on the school buses. We can't deny ridership to any student based off the No Child Left Behind. And we also don't know when we load a child on these buses if that child is sick, because that temperature taking takes place at the school. So potentially we could be loading children from day to day who may have the virus, may be sick without even knowing. We're not medical professionals and that's not our area, but that could be happening. I'll go back to the 5 points that I made initially that are important. The social distancing is a must. Again, it's not only to maintain the safety of our drivers and monitors, but it's to maintain the safety of the students that they transport as well. The wearing the face mask, the face covering, again, a crucial point in making sure that we're not contracting or spreading this virus. Sufficient airflow has been deemed important, again, in ensuring that we're not spreading this virus around in these enclosed spaces such as a school bus. The continual sanitizing of the school buses, again, cutting down on that virus and the potential spread of that is crucial. And the safe, proper loading and unloading of these students. Those are all the 5 crucial parts of providing safe transportation for Duval County. And at this point, with the current proposed guidelines and processes that has been presented to our drivers and monitors of Duval County, it's apparent that safe transportation is not going to be possible at this point.
Unless you think that all of these people aren't important to your children, I, to this day, remember my school bus driver. We fondly called him Uncle Art. My school crossing guard was May Ovington, and our school custodian, who in a school with a population of some 800 kids knew most of us by name, it was Eddie. So every one of those people is so important to us when we were kids. Terrie, Brady.
Thank you, Bruce, and to Channel 4 for always being on top of this and trying to meet the needs of our viewers and for our employees and the parents. I can tell you as a teacher, this has been probably the toughest 3 months that I've gone through with my staff here at DTU and myself. We know almost every teacher, every paraprofessional, every office personnel, we want to keep them safe. We don't know all of our students, but that's what we're here for, is to educate and keep our students safe. I'm sorry I get a little emotional because so many times people say, people don't care about us. They're not looking after our safety. I can assure you, every single person that I've worked with the district, including the superintendent down, and everybody in this office and everybody else involved, is trying to make sure that these working conditions are safe for all of our employees and our students to the best of our ability. Now, does that mean it's going to be perfect? Probably not. Nothing is ever perfect, especially in a pandemic like we're going through right now. But as long as we keep a line of communications open, we keep the level of commitment that we're all in this together, trying to move forward to keep everybody safe and frankly alive, and that we're going to continue to provide the highest quality of education possible, then we're going to get through this coronavirus until we have some type of new normality so that everybody can exhale a little bit every single day. Bruce, I know as a parent, you're feeling these same decisions that you have to make for your family and everyone there at your studio. I know people every day that is catching this virus and they're doing everything right. They're washing their hands, they're wearing masks, and they're doing what's right. And I know one of your own reporters has just come down with it. So we have to be cognizant of what the constant data shows us, what is going on in our own community, and keeping the lines of communication open with parents and with our employees and the district. But please, I must stress this. The coronavirus should not be a political issue. It should be an issue that we all are pulling together to do what's right for everybody involved. And let's take the politics out of this and allow people who know what viruses mean, what the health department knows is right, and what CDC knows is right, and what we know what we need to do as educators to provide a safe and working environment when these doors open, whether it's the doors of a school bus or a cafeteria or the doors of these schools or the doors of these classrooms. Again, thank you so very much. And we're going to continue to work to push forward to do what's right for everyone, to keep them safe and keep them healthy, hopefully, and to educate our children, because you know what? Every single one of those children deserve it, because when those parents send their students to Duval Virtual or Duval Homeroom or to bricks and mortar, that is the best child that they have in their house, in a household. They love those children just like we love those children, and we owe them the best that we can give them. So Bruce, thank you so very much for you and your station. I'm sure there's a lot of other questions we haven't answered, but we're willing to do that at a future date if necessary.
Imagine being a juggler and most of the balls, most of the time, are up in the air. That's Superintendent Dr. Diana Greene's job. Dr. Greene, some final comments.
Well, thank you, Bruce. But Ms. Brady gave a rousing message there. I almost want to say amen and say pass the plate. But,
okay.
You know, as superintendent, every day I wake up thinking about COVID-19 and I go to sleep thinking about COVID-19 and what we need to do as a school district to ensure that we are, number one, providing the highest quality education that we can to over 130,000 students and with over 13,000 employees, and do it in a way that we are ensuring that we are implementing the best strategies to mitigate COVID-19 and make our schools as safe as possible. And this year, more than ever, that challenge has just like quadrupled, because now we're going to try to do high quality education through 3 different options, whether that is brick and mortar through 5 days a week for elementary and our hybrid model for our secondary schools, or through 100% Duval homeroom or DVIA. This has been the most challenging situation, at least in my career, that I have dealt with. One of our principals, Sarah Bravo, talked about this, likens it to when we went through desegregation and the immense polarization about the topic itself. We are doing everything, starting with our school board. They are asking the tough questions. They are constantly looking at other districts, what other organizations are doing to ensure that we are implementing the best possible strategies. And as I said on another interview, I believe Duval County Public Schools has been more forward thinking than any other school district in the state of Florida about how to educate our students during this pandemic.
I agree.
We were the first to, as I stated, we were the first to come out and say, yes, our students will be wearing facial coverings. We were the first to come out with the desk shields. We were the first to come with a plan that was collaboratively developed with our union about going to Duval homeroom. So whatever is out there that we feel that we can grab hold and utilize, whether it is brick and mortar or through Duval homeroom, we're going to do it to ensure that, one, we're providing a high quality education to our students. Two, we're ensuring that whether you're in brick and mortar or working through Duval homeroom, we're providing those resources and support for our employees and our staff. The job of superintendent has changed. And through this situation, the leadership, whether it's coming from DTU or from even the Teamsters working through the bus contractors that we contract those services from, the leadership is what's needed. And I think today you see that the leadership is there. We don't always agree, but I think we can all agree that our number one priority is to figure out how can we educate our students in the midst of a pandemic and do it in a way that we're giving our families opportunities to make options. We're giving our employees the opportunity to make options. And again, this is not going to be perfect. This is going to be a very long school year, but together we can get through this. Together we can get beyond survival to being able to thrive educationally for our students and our employees.
I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your precious and very tight schedules for spending time with us on this News4Jax virtual town hall. Now, if you could only help me help my 15-year-old do algebra and trig, you know, I'd think that you were saints. To those of you who are moms and dads and tuned in to our virtual town hall, don't forget it's our News4Jax Facing the Fall web section for updated news all the time. Sign up for our daily newsletter, and our next town hall is Tuesday, August 4th at 10 a.m., where the focus is on St. Johns County. Stay safe, do the best for your kids, and make sure that you kiss them goodnight and tell them you love them every day. Have a great day.